Hey everybody, this is Joric. Welcome back to Portugal and Beyond. Thank you so much for checking out my channel. If you're new or have not yet, please consider subscribing to get more information about Portugal as well as European travel and travel news as I get it. I try to pass it on to you. Today is part 2 in a series that I'm putting together on a playlist about investing in Portugal real estate. This one is near and dear to my heart, and I hope that you will be able to do a couple of things. Learn a couple of things that you didn't know about how Portugal real estate, specifically what you're buying and who you're buying from, how it works. You'll get informed about that. And also I'm hoping that the questions that I ask in this, you can take and ask a seller or realtor when you're looking to buy a property. So here goes. First things first, as the thumbnail says and as the first slide says, do your homework. It's really based upon you to do the homework and the due diligence, the DIY, if you will, because in Portugal, they don't have an inspection process. When you are buying a property, in many other countries, you'll have an inspection report that talks about the things that are good, the things that are great, the things that might need renovation or repair, so you have a full picture of what you're buying. Portugal, that's not the case. There are a couple of people, it's my understanding, I don't know who they are, that might do some of this third-party work, but it doesn't exist in Portugal for the most part. You can't get an inspection, so it's really on you to do that. So you have to have a trusted realtor that will help you through this process and help guide whether you're making the trip here to see the property in person or as they're looking at properties on your behalf. You might need to go through 10 of them. I got to be honest with you, until you find one that you're comfortable with, that you think knows their stuff, that can really be a help to you versus a hindrance. So because there are no inspections here, there are a couple of things I want to touch on. Looked at over 200 properties in 4 or 5 years of coming to Portugal and 3 years of living here. Most of them were investment related or potentially investment related. Out of those, I only looked at a handful that were farm properties or outside of a city center with a house and property for, let's say, a garden or an actual building to potentially renovate. So I don't have much experience with that. But I will tell you, if you are looking at a farm property, a building, or a house, a detached house with land, get a third party to survey it, period. Do not rely on the listing that will say that it's so many square meters. Don't trust it, and I'll explain why in a little bit. If you're looking at apartments, which we bought our apartment. We're always looking at opportunities to invest in other apartments and flats throughout Portugal, the mainland, the Azores, and Madeira. One thing that I highly recommend you do is you get a tape measure and you measure every room to see if the square meters matches the listing. Out of 200, more than 200 properties now, I'm probably in the 220s to 230s. 60 to 70% of them aren't close to, they aren't within 3 to 4 meters of what's listed on a property, and it's always in the seller's behalf. So for example, if it's 65 square meters, it ends up being 61 or 62 in reality. Actually saw a property that said it was 74 square meters. When I did the measurements, it came out to 48. That's not fat fingering, or that's not an error. That's an egregious, that's completely wrong. So I recommend any place that you're looking at, measure it yourself or have the realtor, both of you, measure as you're looking through the apartment and the land, because oftentimes some of the surveys haven't been done for decades. And if you're buying a property, you want to make sure that if it's outside of an apartment, you're getting what you're supposed to get, not getting into an issue with the neighbor's property that now is now your property or falls within your line, or there's a property dispute along that way. So that's first things first. Along those lines, I mentioned square meters. I'm going to show and put up a slide here that is from the newspaper July 1st, 2022. So it's saying, based upon recent sales, here's what the average square meter price is per meter in various municipalities throughout Portugal. It's not all of them, but it'll say it's like the top 10 here. If you look at Lisbon, where we live, it's saying that it's now 5,000 per square meter. And there's something that I want you to do. So even though that is something that is out there and being published, it is my contention in looking at a lot of properties and seeing the volatility and the opportunities or opportunistic tendencies here in Portugal. I actually think when it comes to square meter, there's two different numbers to think about. So there's the first one is for a new or newly renovated property, what is the average square meter cost? And then what is the average square meter cost for a gut job up to needs work, so to speak. So none of which are going to be brand new or move-in ready. Now, in most countries, the average square meter takes into account complete renovation to brand new. Here, it's not the case. And when it comes to the square meter thing, and the reason I think there's actually two numbers, not one, is I'm going to use our own building as an example. We have two apartments below us being worked on as we speak. One is about 30 days from going on the market, one's about 60 days. The same contractors being used. It is the same square meters apartment. It's the identical apartments, just one on the left, one on the right side of the building. They're going to use the same appliances. The difference is it is two different sellers. So I was able to speak to the one seller where the property is going to be on the market soon. And I said, so what are you going to price it? What I want to get a feel for what the value is going to be. And he threw out a number that was about $150,000 more than what the going rate, or what would be called the comps in the area, are going for a renovated apartment. That's about 60 to 65 square meters in size. And I was looking at him funny, and we were both speaking English because he speaks several languages. And he said, are you alarmed, or do you have any doubts? And I just said, that just seems way high for this area. He said, no matter. I'm going to get a foreigner who's going to buy it. One of you Americans or a Canadian or somebody from France will end up buying it. I'm not worried. And he was very flippant about it. And I just kept going, okay, so he just slapped a number, or he's going to put a number out there that has no bearing with anything, and see what happens. Okay. Well, across the hall is another person. Last week I was able to see that person and meet up with that seller. And I asked him, what are you looking to sell for? And so he gave me a number. And the number was about $120,000 less than his neighbor across the hall. And I was looking at him for a while and I was asking about the square meters and what he was doing, and it was all the same as his neighbor. And then I told him, do you realize that your neighbor's going to be putting it up for X plus Y? And he sat there for a minute. He kind of looked at me and looked at the neighbor's doorway and then looked at me and said, okay, that's what I'm going to put it as. Again, having no bearing on anything and not tied to house sales, comps in the area, anything like that. So I really think that as you're looking for property anywhere in Portugal, you really have to take a close eye at what they tell you is that average per square meter cost, because I think it's just all over the place. Okay, so that's something I want to make sure I drive home. The number is just the number. That is something that will lead to my part 3, which will be in a week or two, talking about negotiating the price. So I just want to make sure that you're aware of that. Something that is very important in Portugal that is a little unique, you do have to ask these questions. Who actually owns the property you're buying? Is it one person? Is it a co-op of several people? Is it a company? Is the property free and clear of any debts? And that may sound odd for you to have to ask that, but your realtor, you need to make sure your realtor is doing the due diligence on this, because in Portugal they have the law of subrogation. And without getting technical, it basically says that the law, the debts get attached to the property, not the borrower. So I want to give you a scenario here just as something to think about, because this has happened to at least 2 people I've met over the course of the pandemic that ran into the, we didn't know this and now it's on us. So imagine a scenario. You finally got the keys to a place in Portugal. You're retired in Portugal. You're coming here. You want to check it out. You have property. Life is good. And then a month or 2 months later, you get a mortgage statement, but not from your mortgage company. You open it up and it's 3 years of back payment on a mortgage that wasn't paid for that particular property. Guess who's on the hook for that? You. Then a couple weeks later, you get bills, utility bills, water bill and electric bill, and it hasn't been, either of them have been paid in a year. You're on the hook for that. Those are things that come up as being your issue. And then maybe it takes another month. It might take a while for the process, the bureaucracy to work through. And then you get a bill from the IRS. Well, the mortgage hasn't been paid for 3 years and neither has the taxes. All of that falls to you because you are now the property owner of that property. And as the things get attached to the property, it's on you. So you have to make sure with this law of subrogation, absolutely positively, there are no debts or outstanding, I guess, liens, for lack of a better term, on the property, to make sure that you're just buying what you think you're buying. You're not buying the property plus someone else's bad debt that's been piling up. So very important, and I want to make sure that you understand that. Next, these are a series of questions that I want to make sure that you're asking. Some of them may be review and you ask them everywhere, but because again, there is no inspection process, these are things that I think if you do not get clear and succinct answers to, I wouldn't necessarily move forward buying the property. Or if you do, you have to know that if something happens afterwards, it's going to be on you. So a couple of things. I'm going to stick with apartments because that's really what I know. I can't give you good information on farms or buildings, but I would think some of this may still apply. But for an apartment, how old is the building? Has the apartment itself been renovated at all in the past? Have there been any upgrades or updates or any issues in the past? Any leaks, any problems? What is the structure made of? So the building / the apartment, wood, plaster, brick, combination of all the above, something different, steel. Those are things that I think you need to have answers to, just so you know if you need to fix something, you know what you need to use. Also, looking at things like the plumbing, the electricity, looking under sinks, looking in cabinets, looking for mold. Again, you have to be your own inspector here. So going underneath the kitchen sink, the bathroom sink, looking in carpeted areas to see if there's any mold that you can see or any water spots on the ceiling of an apartment. Those are all important to look for. Does the property have any pests? Is there any history of bug spraying for cockroaches, for termites, especially termites? That's something that you want to ask about. The energy rating. When you're looking at listings, they'll have ratings. I want to say they go through like A through F. A means they have a superior rating. F, maybe even a G, means they have like nothing. And where I'm going with that is, what type of insulation do they have on the property? Most buildings in Portugal do not have any insulation whatsoever. So even new properties don't have much insulation. But asking about what is the insulation rating? What are the windows, the rating on the windows? Exterior doors, doors that are open like to a terrace, like French doors or something, do they have a rating on them? If you have a heating and cooling system, so right over my shoulder here, you can see something right up near the wall, which is our air conditioning in the summer and our heat in the winter. Are those things, do they have a rating? All the appliances, ask for ratings for all the appliances so you know and you have some idea on what type of energy savings or expenses you may have based upon what they've put into the building, or maybe what you need to renovate the building with, or your apartment, the apartment. So specifically to these things here, we bought our building, or bought our apartment, sorry, I keep saying building, our apartment, knowing that these didn't exist. There were electrical outlets for these units, but this apartment never had heating and cooling. So we knew we were going to do that. What we didn't know, and we didn't even think about, is that there should be an irrigation line coming from that unit down, going outside, behind my back here, to our terrace. Well, a few months after having these, turn it on for the summer, it's on for a few hours, and we look at the wall and we start seeing some leaking, but we also see some bubbling behind the paint. And it's because the irrigation line, which should be open and free to the outside, isn't there. So if you have or have HVAC units like this, it's important to ask, are the irrigation lines clear, and have they tested them to make sure that you're not going to have leaks or anything or mold going on in your walls, because you don't want that. And that's thousands of dollars of repairs. We can speak to that. So also, questions if you're looking at a property that needs renovation. The majority of properties need renovation. If you're buying a new or newly renovated property, I would imagine you're not going to need anything, but you're also going to pay a premium for those properties. But those that need renovation, maybe it's mostly renovated, but they need HVAC units, or they need a new cabinetry in the kitchen, or they need a new shower. Some of those things that you need to ask is, when you're looking at contractors, how long will it take to get an estimate for the renovation? I don't mean the renovation itself. I mean just getting the estimate. How long will it take them to come out? How long will it take them to get a quote? How long will it take the quote to get to you? That, in some cases, we're finding might be 6 to 8 weeks. So it's not like you come out for a week, look at apartments, you like one, and within 48 hours, someone's going to look at it and turn around and give you a quote for renovations. It just doesn't happen that way here. It's going to take weeks to get that in the best case scenario. Also, let's go to the next step. How long will renovations take? If you need something done, so for example, the two places below us, one was estimated 75 to 90 days, the other one was 90 to 110 days, given the amount of work, and because it's the same construction company working on it, they started one, and if they get done with one sooner, then they can get the other one done sooner. But will it take 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year? That helps you determine, if you buy a property now, will you not be able to live in it for up to a year? Or if you're renting it out as an investor, when will you be able to start occupying the property, either with yourself or with someone else if it's an investment property? Questions that you need to ask the realtor, and that realtor needs to ask the building, I'll call it the association, or I'll use an American term, homeowners association, or HOA, because we do have them. I don't know necessarily what they're called here, but they work in the same way. So you want to ask too, as you're looking at a property within a building, what are you allowed to change with HOA approval? What are you allowed to change or amend within your apartment without HOA approval? So meaning, can you change the entry door? Or does that have to go through an approval process? Can you do something to the terrace one way or the other? If you have a balcony on the front or the back, can you do anything without their approval? What can be done? What can't be done? And then I would also ask, what are future plans for the building itself? Are they planning and saving for a new roof? Updating a staircase if for some reason it's older, they need to update that. Elevator repair and maintenance, or putting in an elevator in an old place or putting in a new one. Patchwork or paintwork on the facade. Are they going to repaint the facade of the building anytime soon in the front or the back? Are there patchwork? Are there issues that they need to have a construction team come out and patch up some of the holes in some of the places where it needs a little TLC? Those are things that you need to know, because your fees for being in the building, I'll call it the common area or the association fees, could go up, or they might decide on a one-time fee to be able to put in a new roof or something. So those are things that, as you're looking at a property and you're thinking about, you do need to be aware of. Because of lack of inspections, you need to become your own inspector and really do some diligence. And then also the law of subrogation. Who are you getting the property from? Is it free and clear of any debts so that you're not assuming past debts from someone? That is very important. And I do hope that as you're looking at this, the questions that you're asking, some of these would be questions that you might already ask if you're used to buying and selling properties, but there may be some in here that are specific to Portugal that I hope that you do ask or add to your list of questions for your realtor and the seller so that you have a good buying experience when you're going to be in Portugal someday. So as always, thank you so much for taking the time to watch the video and enjoy your travels.